we had mentioned this. We had mentioned this that over the weekend it was really wall-to-wall coverage of this assault of Paul Pelosi, and it's very obvious that Democrats are trying, and I think they're being even more obvious about it this time around than they're going all in on. This is the result of Republican rhetoric. This is what they're straight up saying this, and this is because they're dishonest people. Start with that. They're desperate because they're about to lose, and they know that, and so they're hoping maybe, just maybe, this will work to change elections. I mean, think about the logic of this, my friends. A lunatic, nudist Berkeley hippie attacks Paul Pelosi in his underwear, and therefore somebody shouldn't vote for, Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. Like, is this really what I just want to be clear how crazy this is, but this is actually what they are saying. I mean, here is on NBC News, not even on MSNBC, but one is equally as crazy and partisan as the other, honestly. Here is some analyst over at NBC News saying it doesn't matter if Paul Pelosi's attacker is mentally ill. It is, you guessed it, Trump's fault.
There is talk that maybe he has mental issues. I mean, I think if you're going online, you're saying this stuff, it's clear you have some mental issues. The question is, did the mental issues arise because of what he read online, or were they there before that? And really, does it matter at this point if it's politically motivated?
Katie, at this point, it simply does not matter. The problem is people keep egging these people on. There are people on the television across the street from us that egg these people on, talking about cabals and stuff, and people secretly running the world. And this guy doesn't like women either. So that's happening right now. And then on top of it, you have political figures. You have the previous president of the United States, posting about QAnon on his social media platforms.
I mean, Clay, you notice it immediately just goes to, I want to talk about how Trump is evil and Republicans are awful, even though the connective tissue here between this Berkeley nudist hippie lunatic and anything having to do with the right is absurd, honestly. I mean, this is just crazy.
Yeah, and look, you and I were talking about this, and I think this is one of the legacies of social media. As soon as somebody does something crazy, and let me be clear about this, there are crazy people of every political persuasion. Buck, I used to work on Capitol Hill as an intern back in the day when you could still get mail, right? And my job was to open mail and file it away and say, hey, this person has an opinion on this or that. I was there during the Clinton impeachment trial, and so I would stack up all of the different letters that would come in. And we had a drawer we called the crazy drawer. And it was where you would go, and I'm not kidding about this. Anybody who's ever worked on Capitol Hill in that era knows what I'm talking about. You would get letters that were written like ransom notes, where people cut out individual letters and paste them together from newspapers to make an argument one way or the other. And that would happen a lot. There were a lot of crazy people of every different political persuasion when you could still send, I don't think you can do it anymore, actual letters to actual members of Congress. And I also answered the phone, and you would answer the phone, and there'd be like a crazy person on who wants to talk to the congressman about this issue or that. The reason why I bring it up is...
Can I just tell you, I had the same thing so my first ever internship was at CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. And this is kind of early stage, internet era. So it was really still handwritten. And one of my jobs was to go through fan mail on the internet. And by the way, later on, CBS, I believe that newsroom did get one of the letters with anthrax. Yeah. Now
that's when they stopped the arrival of actual letters to Capitol Hill.
Before the anthrax letter situation, it was little old me sitting there going through 18-year-old Buck going through the mail. There were people who would write
bottom of the rung on media and politics. That's the lowest level job you get when you're like a 17, 18-year-old kid.
And yes, and I just remember opening, this is for Dan Rather, who we've all now seen is not very bright and really quite boring, especially now that social media has shown these people's thoughts on a more regular basis. Anyway, Clay, people would write in 15-page front and back handwritten letters.
Yes.
I mean, talking crazy talk.
Yep.
So, yeah, this happens. There's crazy people out there, folks.
Lots of them. And I didn't realize how many crazy people there were until I started to do that for, at 18 years old. And so what we didn't do back then was immediately attribute whatever a crazy person does to the narrative of the day. And you see it happen with every school shooting, right? School shooting happens, and it is it's a crazy, white Trump supporter. Oh my goodness, this is all happening because of Trump. Minority does a school shooting. Oh, it doesn't even hardly make a blip on the radar. And do you even know the name of the Bernie Sanders, Steve Scalise shooter? I can't
James
remember.
Hodgkinson. I know it because I get angry at so few people knowing it, but yes.
Nobody knows who that guy is, really, right? He didn't become a known quantity.
Clay, he was shooting his rifle, screaming, and we have Rand Paul joining us, who was there, by the way.
That's right.
Rand will be joining us in 20 minutes. He was screaming, "This is for health care."
Yes.
Explicit policy preference. Now, did I blame Bernie Sanders for this?
I don't think you can.
No.
Yes. You can't blame, and that's the big point here, and it should be something that everybody acknowledges. You can't directly blame people for crazy supporters. Now, when the Supreme Court attempted assassination happened, what we came on, if I remember correctly, Buck, and blamed was this is what the leak of the Supreme Court opinion created, was an incentive to assassinate a Supreme Court justice before that opinion became settled law. That was self-evident. It's been 6 months. I'll just point out we still don't know who inside of the Supreme Court is responsible for that leak, but that created a direct incentive for someone to be killed. And that's what we said on the show. And that was unacceptable. And I still believe it's completely unacceptable.
And to make it even more clear, we're not saying that this is just an argument that is being made by random Democrat X or random Democrat Y, that somehow what happened to Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, is the result of there's a causative aspect. It is Republicans made this happen. That is what they argued all weekend, which is so just deeply dishonest and ridiculous. Joe Biden is arguing this. I want everyone to understand. The actual sitting president of the United States is making this case. Sure, we could talk about the idiot CNN contributors and the idiot NBC contributors who say whatever they're paid to say, and they think that Republicans are monsters, and maybe some of them believe it, and a lot of them just want to, get the clicks for what they say on TV. Fine. But when the actual president is saying it, here he is saying that, okay, you can condemn it, but you also have to condemn those who talk about elections being stolen. Play 4.
It's one thing to condemn the violence, but you can't condemn the violence unless you condemn those people who continue to argue the election was not real, that it's being stolen, that all the malarkey that's being put out there to undermine democracy. You can't just apologize and say the violence. It affects people's mentality. It affects how people think, particularly people who are not maybe as stable as other people. So the talk has to stop. That's the problem. That's the problem. You can't just say, I feel badly about the violence, and we condemn it. Condemn what produces the violence. And this talk produces the violence.
What produces the violence is individuals who are committing this kind of violence, who are completely deranged. Saying that you think an election was under either shady regulations or that it was stolen does not actually result in violence. I hate to break it to them. And even if their thesis was true, which it's not, they lied about the 2016 election for 4 years.
Also, this particular guy seems to be legitimately crazy in every different direction crazy. And I just want to point out, we still don't have the full details of exactly what happened here. How was he in the house? Was there a pre-existing relationship between Pelosi and this guy who attacked him? Evidently, there were other people potentially in the house that were opening the door for the police.
They've updated. Apparently, the police got that wrong. So that was just the two of them. It looks like Pelosi opened the door for this guy at 2 o'clock in the morning. And because it was so, this is the latest from the police. Now, I'm also going to say this. The people that always want to shout at everybody for, it's conspiracies. It's conspiracies. Okay. So let's just talk. Are we allowed to ask questions? Because I remember in the horrific, orders of magnitude worse situation, obviously, than this, Uvalde school shooting.
Yes.
The police lied to the entire country. The police in Uvalde lied to everybody.
They blew it.
So, yeah, but in the early days, remember, it was, we had a confrontation with the guy, and we moved quickly. All lies. All lies. So really what the Democrats want is for you to ignore the evidence of your eyes and ears in recent history in circumstances involving police or involving political narrative and just accept what they say, do what they tell you. And if you don't, you're an insurrectionist who's calling for violence too. These are the same people, by the way, who have to this day never condemned the disgraceful months of rioting under BLM, which Democrats and corporate America were pandering to. Oh, this is great. Oh, some people maybe are a little overzealous when they burn down the police precinct, but it's great.
Raising money to bail out people who were being arrested for violent acts associated with the BLM protest. The Paul Pelosi thing, I'll also say, maybe they've cleared this up. My reading of it, Buck, was that there wasn't actually an attack until the police got there, and then they were fighting over who was going to have the hammer, and then the guy grabbed the hammer and started hitting Pelosi. My point on all this is, this guy's crazy. We still don't have, to my knowledge, the basic facts of everything that took place here, but it didn't stop Joe Biden from immediately rushing to go put this in the category of January 6th. And to me, this is blowing up because, look, I did what most every American did this weekend. I went to a Halloween party. We had a Halloween party. I watched a lot of college football and NFL. I paid almost zero attention to what happened to Paul Pelosi because we talked about it on Friday, and unfortunately, violent attacks in San Francisco continue to set highs, and so it didn't surprise me that a crazy person would attack anyone, let alone Paul Pelosi. So this story, I feel like the Democrats want to somehow revitalize their hopes in the midterm. I don't think your average independent voter is paying attention to it at all. I certainly don't think it's going to change the outcome of this election at all. And if anything, all it did was make Democrats double and triple down on the outlandish Trump is bad and January 6th is the most important part of the midterm election argument, which is what they're trying to make.
There is such desperation among Democrats, and it's because they can no longer, as elections get closer, this always happens. All of a sudden, Republicans start surging because there's a lot of polling that is meant to discourage Republicans, meant to make them think, oh, this is not winnable. Oh, we're behind. Democrats are always oversampled, and their lead always contracts at the end in these tight races. And right now, it is looking like they're going to be in for perhaps the biggest political repudiation at the ballot box, certainly of our adult lifetime.